to adding machines to desktop calculators to smartphones. From iron to stainless steel to silicon-laced aluminum to touch-sensitive glass. From waiting for wheat to reaching for citrus to being handed chocolate to on-demand guacamole. Our world has gotten cheaper and certainly better and most definitely faster. And in recent decades, the paces of change and achievement have accelerated further. We've witnessed the release of more than 30 ever more sophisticated versions of the iPhone in just 15 years. We're attempting to shift wholesale to electronic vehicles at 10 times the pace we adopted traditional combustion engines. The laptop I'm tapping this down on has more memory than the combined total of all computers globally in the late 1960s. Not long ago, I was able to refinance my home at a rate of 2.5%. It was stupidly awesome. It isn't simply about stuff and speed and money. The human condition has similarly improved. During the past 7 decades, as a percent of the population, fewer people have died in fewer wars and fewer occupations and fewer famines and fewer disease outbreaks than since the dawn of recorded history. Historically speaking, we live in an embarrassment of riches and peace. All of these evolutions and more are tightly interwoven, inseparable. But there's a simple fact that is often overlooked. They are artificial. We have been living in a perfect moment, and it is passing. The world of the past few decades has been the best it will ever be in our lifetime. Instead of cheap and better and faster, we're rapidly transitioning into a world that's pricier and worse and slower. Because the world, our world, is breaking apart. I'm getting ahead of myself. My work lands me squarely at the intersection of geopolitics and demography. Geopolitics is the study of place, exploring how everything about us is an outcome of where we are. Demography is the study of population structures. Teens act different from 30-somethings versus 50-somethings versus 70-somethings. I weave together these two disparate themes to forecast the future. My first 3 books were about nothing less than the fall and rise of nations, about exploring the big picture of the world to come. At the end of World War II, the Americans created history's greatest military alliance to arrest, contain, and beat back the Soviet Union. That we know. That's no surprise. What is often forgotten, however, is that this alliance was only half the plan. In order to cement their new coalition, the Americans also fostered an environment of global security so that any partner could go anywhere, anytime, interface with anyone, in any economic manner, participate in any supply chain, and access any material input, all without needing a military escort. This butter side of the Americans' guns and butter deal created what we today recognize as free trade, globalization. Globalization brought development and industrialization to a wide swath of the planet for the first time, generating the mass consumption societies and the blizzard of trade and the juggernaut of technological progress we all find so familiar. And that reshaped global demographics. Mass development and industrialization extended lifespans while simultaneously encouraging urbanization. For decades, that meant more and more workers and consumers, the people who give economies some serious go. One outcome among many was the fastest economic growth humanity has ever seen. Decades of it. The Americans' post-war order triggered a change in condition. By shifting the rules of the game, economics transformed on a global basis, a national basis, a local basis, every local basis. That change of condition generated the world that we know. The world of advanced transport and finance, of ever-present food and energy, of never-ending improvements in mind-bending speed. But all things must pass. We, now, face a new change in condition. 30 years on from the Cold War's end, the Americans have gone home. No one else has the military capacity to support global security, and from that, global trade. The American-led order is giving way to disorder. Global aging didn't stop once we reached that perfect moment of growth. Aging continued. It's still continuing. The global worker and consumer base is aging into mass retirement. In our rush to urbanize, no replacement generation was ever born. Since 1945, the world has been the best it has ever been, the best it will ever be, which is a poetic way of saying this era, this world, our world, is doomed. The 2020s will see a collapse of consumption and production and investment and trade almost everywhere. Globalization will shatter into pieces, some regional, some national, some smaller. It will be costly. It will make life slower. And above all, worse. No economic system yet imagined can function in the sort of future we face. This devolution will be jarring, to say the least. It's taken us decades of peace to suss out this world of ours. To think that we will adapt easily or quickly to such titanic unravelings is to showcase more optimism than I'm capable of generating. But that's not the same as saying I don't have a few guideposts. First comes something I call the geography of success. Place matters hugely. The Egyptian cities are where they are because they had the perfect mix of water and desert buffer for the pre-industrial age. Somewhat similarly, the Spanish and Portuguese rose to dominance not simply because of their early mastery of deep-water technologies, but because their location on a peninsula somewhat freed them from the general melee of the European continent. Toss industrial technologies into the mix, and the story shifts. Applying coal and concrete and railways and rebar en masse takes a lot of money, and the only places that could self-fund were those with a plethora of capital-generating navigable waterways. Germany has more than anyone in Europe, making the German rise inevitable. But the Americans have more than anyone else in the world, than everyone else in the world, making the German fall just as inevitable. Second, and you may have figured this out for yourself already, geographies of success are not immutable. As technologies evolve, the lists of winners and losers shift with them. Advances in harnessing water and wind eroded what made Egypt special into history, providing room for a new slate of major powers. The Industrial Revolution reduced Spain to a backwater while heralding the beginning of the English Imperium. The coming global disorder and demographic collapse will do more than condemn a multitude of countries to the past. It will herald the rise of others. Third, shifting the parameters of the possible impacts pretty much everything. Our globalized world is, well, global. A globalized world has one economic geography, the geography of the whole. Regardless of trade or product, nearly every process crosses at least one international border. Some of the more complex cross thousands. In the world we are devolving into, that is relentlessly unwise. A deglobalized world doesn't simply have a different economic geography, it has thousands of different and separate geographies. Economically speaking, the whole was stronger for the inclusion of all its parts. It is where we have gotten our wealth and pace of improvement and speed. Now, the parts will be far weaker for their separation. Fourth, not only despite the global churn and degradation, but also in many cases because of it, the United States will largely escape the carnage to come. That probably triggered your BS detector. How can I assert that the United States will waltz through something this tumultuous? What with its ever-rising economic inequality, ever-fraying social fabric, and ever more bitter and self-destructive political scene? I understand the reflexive disbelief. I grew up during the age of duck and cover. I find it galling that issues such as safe spaces and colleges devoid of divergent viewpoints, transgender bathroom policy, and vaccine benefits have even crossed into the proverbial town square, much less all but crowded out issues such as nuclear proliferation or America's place in the world. Sometimes it feels as though American policy is pasted together from the random thoughts of the 4-year-old product of a biker rally tryst between Bernie Sanders and Marjorie Taylor Greene. My answer? That's easy. It isn't about them. It has never been about them. And by them, I don't simply mean the unfettered wackadoos of contemporary America's radicalized left and right. I mean America's political players in general. The 2020s are not the first time the United States has gone through a complete restructuring of its political system. This is round 7 for those of you with minds of historical bents. Americans survived and thrived before because their geography is insulated from, while their demographic profile is starkly younger than, the bulk of the world. They will survive and thrive now and into the future for similar reasons. America's strengths allow her debates to be petty,